right, listen, we have our next guest for you. And this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. The packing of the Supreme Court. Yeah, let's get into it. We have Mike Davis, attorney and founder of the Article 3 Project. Thank you so much, Mike, for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this new presidential Supreme Court commission, which has been stood up to investigate reforming the Supreme Court of the United States. I thought it was pretty interesting that he sent out the regular White House press corps statement, that a reporter put together. They had an official White House missive, and then they had a press release that they did that went out to media again. So they really trumpeted this today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very radical thing that President Biden and Democrats are doing here. We have had 9 justices on the Supreme Court since 1869, right after the Civil War, more than 150 years ago. And we had the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg come out and call court packing a radical idea that should be rejected. We just had Justice Stephen Breyer, another Democrat appointee on the Supreme Court, come out and say that this is politicizing the Supreme Court and should be rejected. Democrats can't get the American people to go along with their radical agenda, so they do things like try to change the rules in the Senate, nuke the legislative filibuster so they can do radical things like add new states, pack the Supreme Court, H.R. 1 that's going to federalize elections across America and make it so it's easy for Democrats to steal elections. And the last stop, the backstop we have right now is an independent federal judiciary that holds the political branches in check, that says that you can't do these things. This is outside of your authority under the United States Constitution. You don't have the power to do this. Democrats are trying to get rid of that final hurdle, and that's packing the Supreme Court. And brace yourselves, America. If this happens, they're going to come after our First Amendment right to speak, our First Amendment right to associate, our First Amendment right to worship. They're going to come after our right to keep and bear arms. There's no limit to what these Democrats will do if they have unfettered power after they pack the Supreme Court. This is a grave danger to our republic.
So I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. And I think, you're talking about the First Amendment, but they will then go, they might even pole vault over the First Amendment and go after the second, because the second really guarantees the first. And the gun confiscation, gun registration first, gun confiscation second, only the criminals and people in law enforcement and the elites would have guns. And then they would start to say, okay, now you can't go to church, because they wouldn't be afraid of Americans anymore. And they don't really seem afraid of us now, but I think there's just that one last little hurdle, which is the fact that we are so heavily armed, that keeps them from fully implementing their agenda. And there's the other thing. If you look through history, nations that have gone through a system where, they become very acrimonious and, the country is split into factions and people are disliking each other based on demographics, there's a lot of friction. And then one party rule is instituted, because the court packing would also enable the Democrats to institute one party rule, because there wouldn't be any way to stop them from doing things. You couldn't sue. And the packing the Supreme Court, the ripple effect of that is it goes all the way down through the judiciary. So every court then becomes radicalized because of the way that they're treating the Supreme Court. So can you talk about what you think the timeline would be? I mean, you did describe some of the things that they want to do, some of their agenda, and we know what it is because of the bills they've presented so far and passed out of the House. But what does it look like if they take this on and they actually do it?
Well, this commission is set up for no more than 6 months. There are 36 members on this commission. It's a bunch of left-wing professors. They throw on some throwaway Republicans on there, but I think that if they have the votes, they want to move fast. And the way the Democrats want to do this is there is a 60-vote threshold, a supermajority threshold in the Senate to pass any legislation We've had a supermajority threshold since the 1830s. They want to use H.R. 1 as an excuse to get rid of that 60-vote threshold. Now, fortunately, Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia and Senator Kristen Sinema from Arizona have put their foot down and said we're not going to get rid of the 60-vote threshold in the Senate, and that is key because if they cave, the Democrats will be able to nuke the legislative filibuster in the Senate, and they will be able to pack the Supreme Court and all the lower courts and game over America. Like you said, the Second Amendment is gone. It's amazing to me. I live in Washington, D.C., unfortunately, and you go by the Capitol, and for months they had walls and barbed wire fences and heavily armed soldiers, Capitol Police everywhere. So they have no problem using weapons to protect the elite in this town. But just, on my street last night, someone got shot 12 times. So if you're an everyday American, you can't protect yourself and you can't protect your family. But if you're part of the ruling class, the elite in this town, you get heavily armed protection 24/7. It's just that's just not the way this works in America. And you talked about the reason for the Second Amendment. It's not to go deer hunting. It's to protect our liberty. So I think it's very, very important that people understand what's going on here with this court packing commission. This is a radical assault on our republic, and it is a grave danger to our republic if they pack the Supreme Court. Our country will be done.
Yeah, but they're also, and Mike, so you're framing this in exactly the type of urgency that I feel like it deserves. But in this press release, it also describes other so-called reforms. It said, including an appraisal of the merits and legality of particular reform proposals. The topics it will examine include the genesis of the reform debate, the court's role in the constitutional system, the length of service and turnover of justices on the court. So justices are appointed for life. We've complained about it. Democrats have complained about it. I mean, every American has at some point said that person shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. They've been there too long. So we do complain about it, but no one's actually taken any action towards changing that because we've said over and over again, we don't want them politicized. It goes on to say the court's role in the constitutional system, the length of service and turnover of justices on the court, the membership and size of the court, and the court's case selection, rules, and practices. So this isn't reform. Reform is, we have some problems, and so you work on the problem areas. This sounds like the complete and utter remaking of the Supreme Court.
That's exactly right. So this is one of the main reasons I started the Article 3 Project, article number 3project.org 2 years ago when I left the Senate Judiciary Committee, because I saw that the Democrats were cooking this up. This is a radical assault on judicial independence. They want to pack the Supreme Court. They want to impose term limits on justices so they can get rid of the Republican-appointed judges who are an obstacle to their radical agenda. And they're also looking to do impeachment. They harassed Justice Kavanaugh even after he went on the bench, threatening to impeach him. And the goal here is they want total control. And the Supreme Court, the 6-3 Republican-appointed Supreme Court is the final obstacle to the Democrats getting total control. And that is what is at stake here. We cannot let court packing happen because it will end our country as we know it.
So, Mike, I find it a little comical that it's just one area of the three, we have three branches of government. They currently control the executive and the legislative. So if they really want to do things, right, they can't they just go ahead and do them? Like the logic, you look at their numbers and you're like, okay, now actually the Democrats only have 48 members in the Senate. They have 2 independents who caucus with them. So, it brings their number up to 50. And then they have Kamala Harris as the vice president who serves as a tie-breaking vote. So they do have control, as tenuous as it is. So why don't they just go ahead and, find Republicans? This has been something they've been very good at. Find Republicans who are moderate enough, who will agree with them on some of their ideas, and use their coalition to push through their agenda for the 2 years that they're certain they have control of the two. Because at some point, you have to admit that they worked really hard at, doing whatever they did last year to get to this place, yet there's no satisfaction. They're not happy with it. They're not getting their agenda done. In fact, I feel like there's a lot of failure, a lot of acrimony, a lot of recrimination, and they seem like they're not happy with what the bills that are coming out of the House, they're not happy with them. They don't even have full Democratic support on a lot of these bills.
They know, the Democrats know that the American people do not support this. President Biden won in a hotly contested election. The Democrats barely won the Senate. They have a 50-50 Senate with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the tie. Democrats lost seats in the House of Representatives, and they lost state legislative seats and governor's races all across the country in 2020. They do not have a mandate for any radical change, and nuking the legislative filibuster, the 60-vote supermajority vote threshold that we've had since the 1830s in the Senate, passing H.R. 1, which would federalize elections and gut election security, adding new states like D.C. and Puerto Rico. Who knows? Maybe the Virgin Islands, maybe Guam. Where does it end? With Democrat senators in each one of those states packing the Supreme Court. We've had 9 justices on the Supreme Court since 1869, again, more than 150 years ago. This is a means to an end for them. They are trying to establish total control. They hate America as we know it. They think that we are a force for evil in this world, and they want to change that. And they want to remake America into this, this socialist utopia, whatever the hell they're aiming for. But what they're trying to accomplish with court packing will destroy our country.
So I agree, but I was also scrolling through here on this one, and you mentioned some of the they're so-called Republicans, right? They're in the press release they call them prominent conservatives, but honestly, anyone who would serve on the court packing commission with these Democrats, because that's what this is not someone who's there to stop them from doing it. These are people who they're not really Republicans. So I look at the people that they listed on here that are supposed to make, I guess, the rest of Americans feel like this is bipartisan. It's not. And there's kind of a finality to it. Other proposed measures include narrowing the court's jurisdiction, requiring a supermajority for decisions on some legal matters of consequence, and imposing rules to create more ideological balance in the court's composition. Did we ever hear about ideological balance when the Democrats were in charge, when they had the majority on the court?
No, I mean, the issue is that President Trump's biggest and most consequential accomplishment during his presidency was the transformation of the federal judiciary, including transforming the 5-4 Chief Justice Roberts Court to the 5-4 Clarence Thomas Court. So you have the first true conservative majority on the Supreme Court in more than 80 years. President Trump also appointed a near all-time record number of lower court judges to the critically important federal courts of appeals. I think he was at 54. You can go to Article 3 Project's website, article number 3project.org, and there's a feature on there called Judiciary Tracker, and it shows President Trump's success in transforming the federal judiciary. He flipped 3 federal courts of appeals. There are federal courts of appeals that divide up the country by region mostly, and there are 13 of these courts, and President Trump flipped 3 of those from majority Democrat-appointed judges to majority Republican-appointed judges, including the 2nd, 3rd, and 11th circuits. The 29-seat, once out of whack liberal 9th Circuit in California, the West Coast, when President Trump took office, there were 11 more Democrat-appointed judges than Republicans. When President Trump left office, that was down to just 3. So President Trump made a huge impact on the federal judiciary. The only president who appointed more Article 3 judges than President Trump was President Carter. And the only reason President Carter was number 1 was because Congress created 152 new judgeships for President Carter to fill. Otherwise, President Trump would far and away have been number 1 of 45 presidents for the number of Article 3 judges that he appointed. And Democrats lost badly in the judicial fight, and instead of trying to catch up and win elections and win the presidency and win the Senate that they should have, that they thought they were going to win 4 years ago with Secretary Hillary Clinton as their nominee, they lost, and they lost badly. And now instead of trying to catch up through the regular rules, they just want to throw out all the rules and and play catch up through court packing and through term limits. And like you said, do you think that they would have court packing or term limits if there was a majority of liberal justices on the Supreme Court? Heck no.
So you're a fount of information historically, because you just talked about Congress creating all of these judgeships for Carter to fill. I think you can probably go back, I'm just guessing here, go back and trace a lot of the liberalism that we see entrenched in our education system and all over the country in different areas. You can find that it sprung up after that because Carter appointed liberal judges. And I love one of my favorite things to point out is that President Trump wouldn't have had as many judges to appoint during his time had Obama done his job. But he didn't. He left, I think, 70 vacancies, which made it possible for President Trump to have such a record-breaking time.
That's exactly right. Actually, I'd have to go back and look, and this is on judiciarytracker.com on our Article 3 Project's website. I think President Obama in 8 years appointed 55, somewhere in there, 55 or 56 federal appellate judges. President Trump did 54 in 4 years. And the problem with President Obama is he was an ineffective president. Most senators are, right? It's very uncommon for senators to get elected directly as presidents just because they don't have the executive experience. And I served as the chief counsel for nominations on the Senate Judiciary Committee. I worked in the Senate, so I know how senators operate. They don't make good presidents. President Biden is proving that, once again, that senators don't make good presidents. When Vice President Kamala Harris assumes the throne, we're going to find out very quickly that she's not going to be a good president either. She's not even a good vice president. She was put in charge of securing the border, and she's nowhere to be found. But President Trump had brought his business experience to the White House. He prioritized judicial nominations along with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, my former boss, then Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, and the chairman for the last 2 years of the Trump presidency, then Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham. And the four of those guys did a phenomenal job, and they focused on filling these vacancies that President Obama very kindly left behind for President Trump to fill, like you said, and they were a smashing success. It was the most effective 4 years of judicial appointments in our history, and that says a lot about President Trump.
Yeah, and you're not exaggerating. I've navigated over to judiciarytracker.com from your website, at the Article 3 website, and you have Jimmy Carter with the top, all Article 3, and then Donald Trump is next. He had 266 for Carter, 234 for President Trump, and then George Bush 204. And the comparative, I mean, George Bush was there for 8 years. President Trump was there for 4.
Correct.
So, you can, these are comparisons that matter. And then on the U.S. Court of Appeals, you're right. It's Jimmy Carter 56, but Donald Trump 54. George H.W. Bush 42. So, you go George W. Bush, again, 8 years, only 35. Ronald Reagan, 8 years, 33. So this is a great website. I'm going to put this in the Twitter feed for people to check out, because if you're anything like me, you hear something like that, what Mike just shared, and you're like, that's interesting. I didn't even realize that. And so a website like this, you can kind of go down the rabbit hole and learn a whole lot. But it also underpins what you've been saying here. And I just want people to take this seriously. And the questions that I feel like we need to ask, Mike, are, obviously I just asked one of them, like, why are the Democrats doing this when they control the executive and the legislative? They could get their agenda through if everybody was on board. But you've answered that. The American people aren't in support. But there's something even more sinister here, and that is Democrats aren't satisfied with the volleying back and forth and sharing of power. They're not okay with acknowledging that half of the country opposes their agenda, and that those are still valid people, ideas, and viewpoints. They seem just hell-bent on totalitarianism and moving to, it's not just leftism or Marxism. They're moving to a place where we've never been in this country before. And I just find that it's fascinating, but it's also frightening.
Yeah, you see these Democrat politicians in the ruling class in Washington, and they're teaming up with the woke cancel culture crew, whether it's the woke cancel culture crew in big tech with Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, Apple, or the woke cancel culture crew in these other leftist organizations, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, the Lincoln Project, academia. It used to be, my parents were Democrats when I was growing up. They were just working class Catholic Democrats, and so I was raised by Democrats. I was a Republican since I knew how to think, but my parents finally grew up. But it's a different party from our parents and our grandparents' Democrat Party. It's not a party of the working class anymore. It's the party of the ruling elite, and they want this ruling elite party wants to control everything. We saw this. We've seen this over the last year with COVID. They've used COVID as an excuse to try to transform the way we live our lives. They're trying to control us, and they don't care about the science. They'll cancel the scientists if they go on Twitter and say things that doesn't fall within the regime's talking points. They'll deplatform them from Twitter or from YouTube or Facebook. This is about power. This is the biggest power grab in our history, and I think the American people really need to wake up to what's happening. This is the Democrats they've made this explicit. They want to overtake America and change. They want to radically transform America as we know it. They think America as we know it. They think our founding fathers were evil, racist. They don't like what we stand for, and they want to change that. And they know that they don't have popular support to do it. They don't have popular support to amend the Constitution. So they just want to rewrite the Constitution by packing the Supreme Court.
Well, as long as you're working and doing all of the information gathering and sharing that you've done here tonight, they're going to have a tough time getting it done. Article3project.org, and it's the number 3. So article3project.org is the website where you can find everything. It's easy to navigate, really, really good website. I recommend that people go to it. Mike Davis, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.